Podcast, everyone. My name is Kevin Odom. I am a licensed clinical addiction specialist, a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and a certified clinical supervisor, all in the state of North Carolina. We have a very wonderful guest on today, Dr. Cook. And then we also have Ruben Burney. I am going to let Dr. Cook start, introduce herself. And then we're going to let Ruben take the bull by the horns on this one, too.
Okay, hi. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin and Ruben, for inviting me. My name is Mary Crocker Cook. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I'm a licensed alcohol and drug counselor in San Jose, California. And I run an alcohol and drug um, program at San Jose City College where we train alcohol and drug counselors, and have an outpatient program here at Connections Counseling called Attachment Infused Addiction Treatment. And so I am delighted to have the opportunity to join you today and let you talk about my favorite topic.
We're delighted to have you. And I had to write mine down. I have a lot of certifications. I'm a certified alcohol and drug counselor for about over 20 years. Have 25 years experience. I'm what you call also a SAP. That's a substance abuse professional for the DOT. I'm registered with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety and Administration, their drug and alcohol clearinghouse. In North Carolina, I'm approved evaluator for the North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicle, and then in North Carolina also I'm certified to do what they call ADAX. That's the Alcohol and Drug Education Traffic School curriculum. That's a
Oh,
curriculum that they have in North Carolina that a person who has might not have a diagnosis, but they had a DWI
mm,
and they might have had a rating of less than 0.15. So then therefore they have to do at least 16 hours if they call ADAX. And that's what I'm certified to do that curriculum. And I'm also a DWI provider. I do assessments and the treatment for the DWI offenders. So I'm certified in a lot of areas.
yes, you are.
Yeah.
So where would you like to begin today? I'm anxious to jump in.
Okay.
No, I was trying to find the mute button and get back. So yeah, listen, I have looked at a lot of your stuff, everything from the attachment infused treatment program that you have to you're a phenomenal author, several books out there. So this is it's typically what I tell people. This is since you are the guest, this is your show. We're just the facilitators of it. So it's typically however whatever you want to start with. I'm interested into learning also about the attachment infuse
Yeah,
program
me
that
too.
you have. So I'm interested into learning many things that and talking about it.
Okay. Okay. So, well, we'll start there. Um, ba- for a long time, I taught at City College. I taught codependency from an attachment theory basis, meaning looking at disrupted early attachment and our inability to manage our emotional regulation as a result. And then over time, I realized that my favorite people to work with are multiple relapse people, people who continue to return to use. They've been to treatment at least 3 times. And so what I started to do was develop a theory using attachment theory around providing care to addiction treatment clients. And it was hard to do, and it took me 3 years at least to do because attachment theory is so vague. It doesn't have a lot of tools. Okay. So what I had to do is operationalize it. All right. And so part of the challenge is recognizing that in the way I'm thinking about this, because of people were not didn't have the early caretaking to help them develop their own self-regulation and self-soothing. Okay, people didn't learn that other people could be part of their recovery, and
Mhm.
so they have tendency to uh, pretty much use substances for self-regulation, not people. Okay.
Yes.
And so that's why my subtitle of my book is when vodka makes more sense than people, because what I see across the board with a lot of these guys is they have a tendency to they'll go to treatment and they actually can program pretty well. They do fine, but they will not utilize 12 step. They will not utilize groups. They will not utilize their counselor because again, in their nervous system experience, people are actually a source of threat or a source of anxiety and not a source of any kind of soothing or self-comforting. Right. So my whole focus is to introduce this idea of people as part of the solution and spending a lot of time putting together for them, helping them learn to be inside their body so they can get internal cues that they're triggered, and what they're triggered by is other people, and then to pay attention to the attachment style they use in reaction to it. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Definitely a lot of sense, because I find that with patients that I've dealt with, who the ones who have been abstinent and they're coming to in a medication, a treatment program, they might have been in the program 5 or 6 years, and they're in recovery. They learn the process of how to express their emotions and to identify the emotions. I find some of the patients that I deal with that are acting active addiction, they tend to feel like either I got to tear you off and be aggressive, or I have to be passive and just let it go. And we try to teach them a model that behavior of being assertive. So a lot of the things what you're saying makes sense, because there was a point before COVID that we had a lot of groups here, and then COVID happened. We started doing telehealth, which is great, but I like in-person groups. You can look at the body behavior and all that. And now patients often say, I don't like groups, Ruben. I said, why? Because I don't trust people. And I try to help them model get with relationship that I have with them to learn to, first of all, trust me as a counselor. And hopefully what I do is, okay, would you be okay if you do one of my groups? And over time they do, and sometimes they come around, but like you said, they don't want to, a lot of them don't want to come to groups, especially when they first come to treatment in active addiction.
Oh, absolutely. And, again, part of what happens early on is theoretically what we're supposed to do as small children is our caregivers sort of through mirroring, there's actually mirror neurons by eye contact, right? This idea of we sort of learn how, what to link a feeling label with a physical sensation, right? And we learn that by taking in how the caregiver manages that. Now, unfortunately for some of us, our caregiver was not available for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
Sometimes depression, sometimes they were loaded, sometimes they were deployed overseas, sometimes they're incarcerated, sometimes they're in a domestic violence relationship where they're preoccupied, all right? And so as I'm growing and I'm experiencing things, I don't have a reflection to help me develop any kind of understanding of that. In fact, my internal world is not even seen. So my experiences, my insides, my feelings, my dreams, my thoughts, those aren't real. I don't even know they're there because nobody's reflecting to any curiosity about that. So what I learn is the only thing that's real is what I can see and touch. Okay. And then what happens is because I don't have any internal sense of me, I'm missing a lot of information about how I'm being affected by things in the world.
Yes.
Okay. And so anytime I have an uncomfortable feeling, I just down regulate it right? And
Hmm.
I just don't go there. So what you see, if I had an unavailable parent, is more of an avoidant attachment where my only happy place is in my head, right? So then you get
Yes.
people like me that have a lot of letters after my name, okay? Because that is my happy place. All right. So the uncomfortable place is when you have to start getting in that underbelly, right? Where I
Mhm.
literally don't feel anything, and if I do, I have no idea what it's called. Okay, so that's one result. Sometimes my caregiver was sometimes there, sometimes not.
Hmm.
Okay, so if they had their world okay, they could hear and see me, but then they'd get hijacked, and they can't. And so all of my attachment skills get designed anxiously around monitoring when are you available and when are you not. And so all of my self soothing becomes your availability instead of learning my own internal feelings, my internal thoughts. So I spend all
Yes.
my time, this is why I originally started with codependency, all my time saying, are you there? Are you not there? Are we okay? Are we not okay? Right? And constantly looking for threats for your availability. Okay. So I'm hyper aware of my external world and particularly feelings,
Hmm.
but not what's going on with me. Then the
Yes.
last type of interruption are parents who, because of their own experiences, are pretty volatile. And so this is the disorganized attachment. This is what this is that my caregiver is actually scary to me. And so we're biologically wired to move toward our caregiver when we're scared.
Hmm.
But if the person who's scary is that same person, I'm in a badass situation. I got nowhere to go.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so this is where
Yeah.
you get the leaving your body, right? We're sort of dissociating, leaving
Hmm.
my body because I can't go to you. And so this is where you get people that cannot read at all um, correctly other people's cues. So I spend all my time not being able to read your intention. I don't know what you intend by that. What do you mean by that? Okay. So my level of threat assessment's very high because I really don't know what you mean by stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so I can't connect with you because everything is a threat, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Gestures. I don't have a roadmap for a non-threatening relationship.
Hmm.
Okay. And these people tend to do very poorly in residential treatment. In fact, they often get diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And the challenge with them is that residential treatment is a version of hell for them because they can't get out. So they're constantly being threatened. Okay. And they
Hmm.
have nowhere to go, nowhere to go. And I've
Yes.
worked in women's treatment, residential treatment, where women would just sit outside and just scream because they were so overstimulated. And this is
Yes.
hard because traditionally we've taken people like this because they look so out of control and we felt like they need more containment and structure. And so we shove them into a very structured situation to contain them. But because
Right.
of the threat assessment, it is a version of hell. Okay.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I'm on a little campaign right now with residential centers lately to try to say, hey, can we just do day treatment? Can we just because they need to go. They need a way to get out.
Yes.
Okay, if you lock them down, unless it's a residential that has a lot of outdoor space, where
Yes.
they can go outside and let their sensory system,
Yes.
because all of this is
Absolutely.
sensory
Mhm.
based.
Hmm.
Okay,
Definitely.
so the avoidant people don't they don't pay attention to sensory stimulation at all if they can help it. This is why they limp around for 3 years and don't even notice. Okay,
Hmm.
you've got the anxious people that overinterpret sensory stimulation.
Mhm.
Oh my god, right? And then you've got the disorganized people that they don't even know where it's coming from. Now, okay, so then you put them into treatment,
Mhm.
and yeah, and most of the KDACs and people who work in treatment have similar trauma backgrounds. So
Yes.
what we have is a countertransference disaster. Because if I am an anxiously based attachment counselor and I get a dismissive, I don't need you, avoidant client, that is a very unpleasant situation, right?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely.
I'll stop talking and
You
let
don't
you
need
talk.
me.
Now you talk. You talk.
No, I was just intrigued by everything you were saying. No, and you make a lot of great points, and it's interesting that you and us got connected, because when I started a PhD program, one of my thought processes, and I never did much research on it, was looking at alcohol and drugs as from the attachment lens, right? Because it mirrors the relationship between the mom and between the person and his or her mom, between the person and her or his dad, that person and their siblings, that person and their abuser, that person and their what have you, right? The system, if it's a systematic or systemic prejudices, racism, discriminatory stuff that's going on. And so when I was reading over your stuff, when you sent it to us, I'm like, wow, this is so interesting, because that literally is true. I've worked with so many people, whether it be in active crises due to substance use, or even in early recovery and long-term recovery, where there's a relationship struggle, right? Where it's not the substance use that is the problem. And I love what the 12-step program says, that it's just a symptom of the problem.
Right.
The problem is our inability to form a relationship with another human being, because and there's many reasons why. And I love the way you characterize it, as there's this type of anxiety, this fear, this threat level. And so I think it takes one of the things I love about Ruben, and this is what I credit him for, but Ruben has been one of the best therapists I've seen to work with high attachment difficulty folks. And I've seen him drop that threat level, and it's nothing that he's done accidentally. I've seen him in action. And so I think it, for any professional, who's going to be watching this thing, this episode later, I think it's important to recognize that our first priority, our first goal, is to build a therapeutic relationship with people, because that relationship can mimic somebody's parents if need be, right? Maybe it needs to mimic a sibling relationship. I've seen Dr. Joy. I cannot pronounce her first name, but she works at Liberty University. When I was in group therapy, we did some type of, and I forget, I'm not an expert at that skill that she was using, but where she had the student play the daughter, I played the dad, another person played the mom, and we kind of did this.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And so, but one of the things is she was able to heal from that type of thing, and all there was trust in the people around her.
Yeah.
And it was just that basic level of trust.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think you said something important, which is, one of the challenges I have is that in many programs, because they're insurance-based, are very, very attached to manualized CBT, evidence-based stuff, okay?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And unfortunately, because I like feral people, it takes me 2 to 3 years, okay? There is no quick fix to this. There is not, okay? And so, part of the other piece of this is when I thought about, okay, how do I operationalize this? One of the things that I did was I have a recommendation that a peer is assigned to somebody and stays with them for at least a year. Because part of the problem with the way we do treatment is in every next level, right, as I'm stepping them up and stepping them down, they have a different counseling staff. That is not helpful. Okay.
No.
We need, for my guys, okay, that can be helpful for lots of people. In fact, I don't even see anybody who's never been to treatment before in my program. I'm like, no, go do treatment. Because if it works for so many people, right? For my guys, you got to have follow them on the long haul. Okay, the long haul. Because it is foreign to them to see other people as part of the solution. In fact, I did a group for almost 2 years, and the only people in it, because kind of like you were saying, Ruben, I had 4 avoidant people, and they wouldn't go anywhere except they would be with me. So I had a group of 4 avoidant people in me, and it
Yes.
was hilarious. We had a very good time, but they wouldn't go. They
Right.
won't
Yes.
do it now. In residential, what happens is I have a peer taking them. And what I'm doing when the peer is taking them and bringing them back is asking them 2 questions, which is, what do you notice your body doing? And what do you notice your behavior? What do you then what do you do in response? Because what
Hmm.
they need to learn is, what am I'm feeling something, and then what is the attachment strategy I use? If I'm an avoidant person, my strategies are all going to be around distancing. So,
Hmm.
how are the
Yes.
different ways I do that? Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes it's I just change the subject. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's I just, leave my body. But I want to be, I'm not going to let you connect. I'm going to tell jokes. There's lots of
Hmm.
ways I can
Hmm.
distance. All right.
Yes.
Anxious people, their attachment style is to move toward the person. And if anything, too much information, oversharing, not reading social cues that the other person would like to stop talking now. So
Right.
that's kind of
Yes.
taking people, hijacking them. Okay. So
Yes.
noticing that, right? But you have to notice what's happening physically first, right?
Hmm.
Oh, my stomach hurts. Okay. And then I start talking, right?
Hmm.
Um, or noticing your tendency to feel threatened. And then what do you do when you feel threatened? Right? So with a peer's job, their only job is to over and over again help somebody begin to learn to notice that feeling doing, and then recognize how that's interrupting their ability, particularly in a residential setting, in the milieu itself, because it's a petri dish.
Hmm.
Okay. And
Hmm.
this is one of the reasons I love residential, because you are being stimulated all the time by other peeps. Okay. Once you go to outpatient, it's hard for me to get them to do this.
Mm.
Okay.
Yes.
Residential, I got them. And so the peer is on it. The peer is on it. And the counselor, one of the things I did a training yesterday, a 3-hour training with a residential program, where I was working with them around a residential protocol of my model, because they don't have outpatient. So they'll do the residential piece and then I'll do the outpatient. But in
Okay.
programs that have both residential and outpatient, the peer will follow them all the way through.
Yes. Okay.
And so everybody who's working with this client at this facility right now, closely, is on board with what we're doing here, right?
Hmm.
And helping this person begin to recognize, because until you see it, you cannot do anything about it.
Yes.
You
Yes.
honestly believe your discomfort is external to you. So if those people would just not do this, or if those people would just leave me alone, if those people would just act right, you know what I mean? If those
Yes.
people would just shut the hell up, you don't recognize. No, the common denominator is me. Okay,
Yeah.
me.
Hmm.
And I need to hear that in a non-shaming way, right? But I need to see, one of the other things that's damaged with broken attachment is something called reflexive functioning, the ability to see other people's perspective. Okay.
Yes.
So just like I don't know what I'm feeling, I don't see your worldview either. In fact, one of the signs of being threatened or feeling insecure in my attachment is to be cognitively rigid. Okay.
Yes.
My
Yes.
way. And so
Hmm.
it takes a reduction in threat to have the openness to actually let other people's perspective influence me. Okay.
Hmm.
Mm.
So
Yes.
in residential, everybody's sort of nuts anyway. I mean, they're all stabilizing. But what
Yeah.
you want is to, again, this idea of you affect other people. We were talking about this in the training yesterday. You know, they were saying, well, they're only here 30 days. I said, well, this is why you need to point things out to them, because again, the other half of this is they don't get that they affect other people. Okay, so they're not reading it themselves, but they don't get. So, for example, she had one of the counselors one of the residents said to her, "Do you even ever ask people how they feel?" It's something really fucking rude, right? Okay, obviously distancing behavior, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
for sure.
And so what she did, because she doesn't want to have conflict. This is what happens, right? Because in attachment, conflict is a deal breaker, right? So she's like, doesn't have conflict. He's only here for 30 days. She says, well, of course I do, and acts like he was a real statement, right? I said, actually, what could be more helpful would be to say, oh, wow, that was pretty hurtful. Is that what you were trying to do here? Like to let them know they impact people. Because they go around the world doing bad behavior. This other one has a guy that's hideously boring. Boring is a strategy. Okay? Taking people hostage and doing monologues like I've been doing for the last 10 minutes, that is a freaking strategy. Okay? It distances people.
Yes, right.
And he goes, well, I don't want to tell him he's boring. I say, okay, you don't have to use the boring word, but you do need to say to him, I'm noticing a pattern where you're not recognizing other people's verbal and nonverbal cues when you're talking to them, right? You're not, and that is going to get in your way in your recovery.
Yes.
You need to learn to read the room, boo-boo, okay? Because people are like chewing their leg off, get away from this guy, all right? And they're like, well, we don't want to be rude. And see, that's the problem. So all these guys, my guys, particularly the feral, bad behaved ones, nobody says anything. They go to treatment and people talk in clinical staffing about what a pain in the ass they are. But nobody says to them, when you do this behavior, or an anxious one who's horribly intrusive. I've had clients like meet me in the parking lot. I can't even get in the building. Okay, they need to be told.
Yes.
This interrupts your ability to connect with people, honey.
Yes.
Okay, is what this has got. There's a reason this is happening. You don't trust that I see you. So you're trying to force me to see you. You don't trust that I'm going to check in on you. Okay, call it what it is. Instead of doing this, they're only here 30 days. Okay, that's not, to me, that's malpractice. Somebody's got to say you're boring. Somebody's got to say you're up in my ass. Stop it. Somebody's got to say it.
Right.
What happens in the real world is people just leave them, right?
Yes.
People just leave them and with no explanation. And they're like, why don't people invite me to things? Why don't people like me? Well, we saw it because they're in our petri dish. We saw them do this behavior.
Yes.
I had a client that used to like sneeze in his hands and they go to pick up food at dinner. What are you doing? Stop and pay attention to your body. People don't want to roll when you put your hand up in there after sneezing in it. Dude. Now, again, I say these things therapeutically, okay? I don't say them.
I know that.
I don't say to them, dude, what the fuck? I don't say that. But I do say, hey. Okay, I think you missed something here. Okay?
Yes.
You need to go wash your hands. Because when you do that, it affects other people. Again, they don't see it. They do not.
They don't.
It's like a giant blind spot.
Yes.
And it's
You have to model that.
hard. I know it's
Sometimes
hard.
you have to model that behavior. I've been here 13 years at this job, and people know other patients will tell another patient when Ruben, unless it's an emergency, when you see Ruben in the dining room having his breakfast, don't come in there and interrupt him. But they learn, and I have modeled that behavior. Sometimes I have a routine. I go to the hospital across the street. I get my breakfast. I bring it back here. And even sometimes on my way to the hospital, they hijack me. And over time, I bring that to their attention. And over time, other patients would tell them, you know what? you're not respecting boundaries. I've heard other patients say, Ruben's going to get ready to get his breakfast. Give him a break. He'll be right back. And I let them know I see you. I recognize you.
So that's really what it is. That's
Yes.
really what it is. I do not have and because a lot of this learning is physical, right? I don't have a felt memory of being important enough that I can trust you're going to check on me, or you're going to hear me, or you're going to connect with me. And so I either need to get up in your face, or I need to just stay under the radar and be the kind of client that none of the counselors remember because they were so completely compliant and I mean, they're like, they blend in with the lamp, okay? Because they're so good at not being a problem.
Yes.
Meanwhile, you got crisis kitty over here.
Yes.
Right?
So my question to everyone is, right, and as a clinical supervisor, I've worked with the counselors in, previous to where I currently work at, right? I'm not in no supervisor position here where my current job is, but at previous places. I guess my question is, because you've said a lot, right? And I appreciate that. I am learning so much, and I love your personality. It's so you have a wonderful personality. I love it. So my question, hey Trev, how you doing, brother?
I'm
this
sorry.
That's okay.
That's all right.
That's okay. That's okay. This is Dr. Cook. So my question is, right, what do you feel like is missing in the academic programs? What do you feel like is missing from clinical supervisors? Because I know for myself, when I went through and got my clinical supervisor license, right, and as I was going to school, there wasn't much stuff on how to work with a counselor on their fear of challenging patients, right? And even as a clinical supervisor, as I was going through doing all of my training, there's no specific training on how to be a leader. There's no specific training on how to do this, on how to do this, and how to do that. So coming from that perspective, or what do you feel like is critical? Because everything you share about, we read about, we study about.
Yeah. Okay, well, you just asked me one of my favorite questions. I love this topic. And in fact, the reason when I teach codependency and family dynamics, they have to do their own genogram. They have to, the whole thing, I teach from attachment theory. They have to identify their own attachment style. They have to write their genogram paper is how their own attachment style has shown up in their family over generations. Okay, so what I'm looking for, and I'm very blunt, like I'm being with you gentlemen, about how their reactivity to what they're seeing could be helpful and could be a problem. And we talk a lot about this issue of being that it's our job to say what we see. And that is my definition of confrontation. And it's not rude, it's not unkind. In fact, it's our job. So for me to say to somebody, hey, let me have, like, Ruben was just saying, let me have my breakfast. You need to trust that I am going to hear you and see you, right?
Yeah.
Or saying, hey, do you know you do monologues and you've talked for 15 minutes? And what happens is you've hijacked me. And there's no opportunity for us to connect. Do you do that in other parts of your life? Because that's probably getting in the way of your recovery.
Yes.
Okay, that's the therapy.
Yeah.
The way I just said it, the way I just said it to you guys was not the therapy way. Okay, so we have what not to do, which is, back up boo-boo. We don't say that. You say is, hey, I'm noticing this behavior, and you tell them where it's coming from, which is it looks like you are not trusting that I'm going to come back to this. Okay, it looks like, because what John Bowlby said is that our role clinically really is to be the secure attachment.
Yes.
And because my people do not have a felt sense of that, I do have to teach them to connect the visceral feeling of trust. What does physically it feel like? It feels like you're not in your fight or flight system, right? You're not in fight or flight. When you're in fight or flight, trust is left. Okay. So one of the ways you know you're making progress is, in fact, I had a guy say to me, and it took 2.5 years, but yesterday, God bless him, we were talking about he was having a hard time at work, and I got him after 4 DUIs, 3 treatment programs. Okay.
Wow.
This is a committed drinker. And now I've had him for a couple of years. And he told, and the only group he'll do is Rat Bastards. I don't know if you have that in North Carolina, but what it is a very structured, every week they do a step.
Oh,
And you have the same people, the 4 guys in a little thing. It's like 100 guys, but you have a little foursome and you have the same people. So he'll do Rat Bastards because it's not a free flow group. It's a structured group. Okay. But he'll do it. And so and you have to have a sponsor to do that. So he has a sponsor, but it's a step sponsor. Anyway, he has expanded the role of the sponsor for himself. So he tells me the other day, he said, yeah, I was really kind of feeling jacked up at work. And then I noticed it was almost 9 o'clock, my usual time to call my sponsor, and I calmed down. I said, oh, you connected a person with calming. That's the dude. That's what we're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
So making that connection between other people being part of your soothing system. That's what we're doing. But
and
he could
I think
not
that
have done that in his 30-day program. And this is, remember we were talking before about how long this takes. Okay, I've had this guy a while. He's made progress along the way.
Yes.
Okay, but the point is, the best we were going to do with him in 30 days was for him to get that connection between what is my body doing and what are my attachment strategies and reaction.
Well, and I think that goes back to, I do a lot of existentialism and a lot of DBT training. Yeah. And what I have found is how to mix the two together. It brings about some beautiful results because it helps to increase the that self-awareness, right? And one of the things when I do self-soothing techniques, it is about trying to either connect with oneself or trying to identify, as you were just saying, being able to identify those things or people in our external world that helps us to self-soothe, right? And everything that you've been sharing goes back to our relationship with each other, with ourselves, and with maybe those close to us, such as our parents, siblings, aunts, grandparents, those guardians, caregivers, or those people who play those roles. So everything you've shared it goes back to. And so one of the things that I think I'm gonna probably start doing that and increasing that in my own clinical practice is helping people to understand the attachment style between their substance use and themselves.
Yeah,
that is
I think helping people, and I give them attachment assessments and helping people connect. In fact, the whole relapse plan is around relationship as the trigger. That's the point. Again,
people,
all
places,
all of them have done treatment. They've done treatment 3 times. They could teach a Gorski training. Okay? They've not utilized jack, none of it. Why? Because when they're triggered by other people, they're in their sympathetic nervous system and they can't access their frontal lobe. So I don't care how many times they saw Gorski's things. Yes. When they're jacked, it's gone. Okay. So if you don't take care of being jacked, it don't matter. So the whole treatment plan needs to be around how you're going to recognize you're jacked. First of all, well, because of what you're doing. Okay. And then secondly, you're going to calm yourself down so you can then access the tools. Okay. Because it's not they don't have information. They don't have an information problem. Okay. They've been through 3 programs. They do not have information problem. They could describe to you the components of the disease. Okay. That is not helpful to them because when they get up in that fight or flight system, it's all gone. It's all gone. Now you, as the counselor, get the opportunity to be that secure attachment that they've never experienced before. And so the goal then is for them to be able to sit with you at least, because they need a felt experience, and having their sensory system level back down so they know what that feels like. Okay. At the same time, they need to be able to handle conflict without seeing it as, so that was the other piece. You're talking about training clinical people, right? So one thing we
Mhm.
talked
Yeah.
about yesterday is when we point out what we see, which is, hey, you're hijacking people and it looks like you're afraid they're going to leave and you don't trust they'll come back. That's part of your attachment strategy. Okay.
Mhm.
The counselor needs to do that same thing for themselves. They need to take a look at their own strategies. And as the clinical supervisor, you being aware of when you see that countertransference with your clinical staff. Hey,
Yes.
what is it about your own attachment strategy that's being, indicated here in terms of what's going on, right?
Mhm.
But when you confront, meaning you point out what you see with people, it is hard. Okay. And because part of broken early attachment is you don't trust conflict, meaning uh, every single interruption is a deal breaker. Okay. So the assumption is the relationship is not reliable and it's teetering. Okay. And so, yeah, clients need, in fact, one of the best things we can do is disappoint them once, at least.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Forget
I
the
agree.
best thing we can do because they don't know how to handle rupture. They don't have any repair skills. So the
Yes.
best thing that can happen is for you to screw it up, for you to, I don't know, forget something or whatever. And for you to them to get to tell you how they feel about that and you to clear it up because again they don't have felt experience that when there's an interruption it's okay.
Mhm.
Okay, there's a bridge back. They don't know that. So for the anxious people, that's why they never let rupture happen, right? So they're reading your email, they're
Mhm.
hunting you down at breakfast, Ruben. Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
where the avoidant people, they even get a whiff of a rupture and they're out. They're out.
Yes.
They don't give you another chance. They don't even tell you they've left. They're like, that's it. Okay, so the idea, and then the disorganized people will just get nuts, and it won't seem connected to anything. Okay, they
No.
won't even tell you why they're nuts. Okay, just
Yeah.
because there was a rupture. So what we talked about in supervision or in the training yesterday was this idea of noticing people's disconnection when you're in the room with them. Look at ways. Okay, noticing your clients ways that do they change the subject, break eye contact, um, watch their body language, noticing sign of small ruptures the best you can, because sometimes some of them are going to get away from you, obviously, but being able to say, hey, what just happened there? Or I'll say things like, hey, where did you go? It felt like you left the room. What happened? Like calling it there so they experience bringing it back. Say, or if you have, again, it's wonderful if you've done something stupid, being able to say, wow, that was stupid. Man, was I off base there? Or I did not read that correctly. Or, whoa, okay, thank you for telling me that because I did not see that. Right. Or I've
Mhm.
had times, I remember one time this is a while ago, I had a client and she's, disastrously dated the same person for 13 years off and on. And I don't know him, but I hate him. Anyway, she comes in and tells me he's showed up once again. And inside of me, I'm like, ugh, okay. And so I think I was a little more emphatic than I meant to be in my, uh, looking at ways for her to take care of herself because I think I was jacked about, oh, here we go again. Okay. So the next time I saw her, I said, hey, I want to clean something up because I was thinking about it. And I think I might have been a little over emphatic with my reactivity to that last, you know, string of porn text he sent you. Um, because that honestly was not my business. My business is you
Yes.
and how you feel about it.
Mhm.
Right. And of course, typical of a client, she goes, I don't even remember that. Okay. But the point is, again, the transparency required to do this model is higher. Okay. It is higher because they don't know what it feels like unless we do it.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The reason she keeps chasing this dirtbag guy is because of her own difficulty with attachment. Of course, that's why. A guy that comes and goes and disappears for 2 years.
Yeah.
Who else would tolerate him?
Right.
Okay? But somebody avoidant. An anxious person would blow up. Okay? No, an avoidant can go, oh, that's fine. Bless her heart. Okay?
And you often see that. I see that oftentimes when a patient says, you know, their stepfather, their father, you know, they watch the interaction with their parents,
Yeah.
and they see that, my mother boyfriend was like that. And Ruben, why am I attracted to that same type of person? It's like oftentimes you see it's generational. That monologue, that behavior is carried down until there is some type of intervention where they become healthier in their relationships.
Yeah. Well, and it's also attachment strategies are generational
Yes.
as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Now, gentlemen, I'm noticing it's about 10 till 1.
Okay,
1 o'clock client. We don't have to cut
we'll-
off right this minute, but I'm just letting you know my time.
Okay. Yes, and when you get ready to
As
leave,
an attachment therapist, I don't want to, abandon my next patient. That would be
Yeah,
very bad.
no. So
Here's to think about
when you
this.
get ready to leave, that's fine, and we'll continue to discuss it.
Oh,
Because
okay.
you brought a lot of topics in that I can use in my
Well-
interaction with patients.
well, do know that in about 3.5 minutes we're going to shut it down and then debrief
Oh,
over. So that's typically what
okay.
we do. So yeah,
'cause
but
you
go
said
ahead.
talk as long as I want, and I thought, well, first of all, that's 8 hours, and secondly, yeah, I didn't know that. Okay.
No,
Well,
I mean
before you
it's
do that,
totally.
listen to my
It's,
book. Get my
Yes.
book.
Oh yes, I saw that.
Buy that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's backwards now, of course, because of the camera. But it says
Yep.
attachment infused addiction treatment, but it looks like that. It's on Amazon.
I wanted to buy you. You had a book, a developmental behavior biological approach to codependency.
Yeah, that's my
treatment.
codependency book I use. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that in order. I saw
That's
that.
also
Yeah.
attachment based. Yeah.
Yes.
wow.
With everybody in a different way. Imagine if your clientele are in an environment that they can't get out of because of their behavioral patterns over the history of their lives.
Yeah.
Suppose that you had to approach them in a positive manner, but at the same time, they don't have that buildable trust relationship because of the location of where they are. So to develop a set of skills of that level on the adaptability of you, because I know certainly I was never a clinical provider, but I had to develop relationships with these individuals in the environment that they were in
Absolutely.
the
Yes.
sense that I had to be able to show them that there's a different way of behaving than what they are used to, not in a consequences kind
Right,
of.
right, right.
There would be if it was in a negative way,
Right.
but that perception has to be addressed to them in a positive manner so that they grasp the concept that, hey, they can build a relationship with this person and it's
That's
something
right.
I can trust because they're going to work with me,
Exactly.
achieve the goal that I want to get to in a positive way.
Well, and Trevor, you said something important, which is it's not even just grasping intellectually. I need to physically experience what it feels like to be calm with somebody who I can trust,
Right.
right? Because again, you need contrast. And if I've never experienced it, how would I even recognize it? Right? And even if I have felt it, I didn't have language for it. So I didn't know that's what it was. It's like, oh, so it's like when a client comes in and they plop down on the couch, right? And they'll go, I needed to be here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we all have people like this in our world that are
Yes.
kind of like human Xanax. I do. I sit down with them and I'm like, my little nervous system goes, yay. Right? We
Yes.
want to be that. We want to be people's like little nervous system levelers, like where they're like, okay,
Yes.
so at least for the next whatever time I am with you, my nervous system can be calm enough so I can learn strategies. I can hear you. And
Wow.
I can feel cared for. I have a
Yeah.
before I go, I'll tell you, I have a mat in front of my door of my office that says, "Yay, it's you." Isn't it
Oh wow, I
hilarious?
like
Isn't
that.
that funny? I found
Yeah,
that on
it is.
Etsy. Yay, it's
Yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
love that thing.
So
There you go.
all right, Dr. Cook, before we hit the stop button for this
Sure.
live, I'm gonna let you take us out with a call to action for the audience.
My call to action is for you to learn more about this, at least for yourself. While my book, which is pretty groovy, is the actual how to do this in treatment. What I would suggest to you is, even if you're not going to implement this in a treatment facility,
Mhm.
that this is also a spirit for which you by which you could bring to your work. Okay,
Mhm.
it's really the way you think about the connection, even if you don't implement the tools I'm suggesting. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
that's what I would suggest. Cultivate that. Okay, if nothing else, do that, because I think well, first of all, you'll enjoy your work more.
Yes. I can
It'll
see
also
that.
give you patience with the feral people.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. I'm
Kevin, I
ending the
wanted to
live.
see you.
Ruben, I'm
sorry.
ending the live. Give me a sec.
Okay.